So it being 10 o'clock and a quorum being present, oh, there's Amy. I will call to order the Peninsula RTPO Executive Board meeting for February 16th. And I welcome all of you. So glad you could make it. It's a beautiful day out there. It's probably a little cool. And as we always do, I will introduce the members so that anyone viewing our meeting or watching it later will know who everyone is. And I do this as I see people on my screen. So if you just raise your hand or give some sort of acknowledgement. When I'm looking at my screen, the first person I see is Sarah Black, and she is the RTPO coordinator. I am Beck Ashby. I represent the city of Port Orchard, and I am currently the chair of the RPTO. David Fort is here representing Kitsap County, and Mike French is here representing, he is a Clallam County Commissioner. Susan Matthews is with the Lower Elwha tribe. Ed Coviello is a Kitsap Transit employee who is also an RTPO coordinator. Miranda Nash, you got to look up now, Miranda, is our physical agent with Jefferson Transit. Gary Anderson is a port commissioner from the from the Port of Bremerton, who was awarded the best port in the state last year. And then we have Kate Dean, a county commissioner from Jefferson County. Judy Scott is with the Port of Allen. And we haven't seen Judy for a while, but if you will remember, she's been very active in the past and served her 2 terms as secretary of the organization a while back. And then we have Lindsay Schwarm Warren, who is representing the city of Port Angeles and is currently the secretary of the RTPO board. Tracy Parker is with the Squaxin tribe. Steve York is with the Olympic Region DOT, and he is our guest of honor today. Ben Thomas is with the council member with the city of Port Townsend. Ed Stern is a council member with the city of Paulsbo. Nicole Gauthier is executive director of Kitsap Transit. Gunner, I'm having trouble reading that. Gunner is with the city of Bremerton. Amy Asher is executive director of Mason Transit. Stephanie Lilly is with Kitsap Transit, and she's here. I understand John couldn't make it today. And Randy Netherland is currently our vice chair, and he is a Mason County Commissioner. Rachel Anderson represents the city of Sequim, and Marty just popped on. Marty Allen is with the Skokomish tribe. George Blush is new to us today, and he, I believe, is a council person from the city of Shelton. And Wendy Clark Getson represents the Port, why did that just, Jamestown Sklallam tribe. I'm sorry, I was just thinking of Port Gamble Sklallam, and that wasn't going to work for Wendy. So that's who our board members in attendance today. And again, I thank you very much for being here with us this Friday morning. Do we have someone who would make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion?
Looked up in spice and the only thing.
Okay, I missed that. I didn't hear that. Were you objecting to the motion? No. Okay, hearing none, the motion.
I think she was just unmuted.
Oh, okay. Okay. It has been moved, seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Hearing no one wishing to vote against that, the motion is approved with unanimous consent. onto our consent calendar, which includes the minutes from our December 15th meeting, the second quarter invoice approval, and the RTP biennial currency review, all of which we reviewed, that we reviewed in December. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, or would anyone like to move any of?
Madam Chair, I move for approval of the consent agenda and calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against approval of the consent calendar? Hearing none, the consent calendar is approved with unanimous consent. Moving down to our first business action item is a funding offer for our organization to support our RTP update. This is something that Thera is going to talk about, but we have an opportunity to receive $30,000 from the Department of Transportation in support of the work we're doing on our RTP. Typically, we always, with this organization, present an idea and then we bring it back for a vote at the next meeting. This is somewhat of a time-sensitive issue, and so the sooner we could get it approved. So Thera will explain the ins and outs of it, and I will explain that if there's anyone who has opposition to this or would like a more thorough review, we can take the action next meeting. Hopefully, we will answer all your questions and be able to take answers today. That is, of course, with your approval. Thera, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. This is, I think it's a straightforward item. WashDOT Olympic Region, separate from where you normally get your money from, which is WashDOT headquarters. WashDOT Olympic Region has discretionary revenues at its disposal that Steve Rourke has authority over. And he has offered Peninsula RTPO $30,000 out of this discretionary revenue to support development of the regional transportation plan. That would effectively double the budget for your RTP update, which is still a remarkably small budget to do an update like this with. But what this revenue would be used for is to acquire some additional GIS support. So we haven't had any GIS support since the middle of September. And then it would also provide us with funding support to sort of build this online format for the document. That is a big part of this transition, is to go to sort of a perpetual online format for the RTP that makes it easy to keep current and maintain over time. So that's what the money would be used for. This would be invoiced separately from your regular invoices, like what you just approved in the consent calendar. And Jefferson Transit has agreed to, that they can administer this grant separately from the other one for PRTPO. And so I come to you today with this funding request, as we would typically do. It would be approved by a resolution authorizing the chair to execute this contract with WashDOT Olympic Region. We are still waiting on the final contract language back from headquarters. I've coordinated with George, and there may be a little bit of tweak in the final language, but this is the standard general government contract that they use, and we don't expect the language to change much. So with that, I would answer any questions and either look for your action or request to delay action.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Dick Taylor has joined us from the Port of Shelton. Marty.
Well, I just want to say that that's great that they offered that for JS support. That's awesome. GIS is a very powerful tool. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other
Madam
comments?
Chair, can I make a motion?
You sure can.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept this opportunity and allow for the chair to sign on our behalf to receive and work within these funds, please.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve resolution 01-024. You might want to look at that Scribner's there. Accepting $30,000 in funding from Washington State Department of Transportation Olympic Region to support the regional transportation plan update. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against the motion? I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be inclined to vote against the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved with unanimous consent. Thank you very much. That will continue to move us forward. I think we will all be pleased when this RTP is done, and I know we have discussion on that later in the agenda. Moving down our agenda now, we're going to go to the man of the hour. Is it? Yes. So I would introduce Steve Rourke that I'm sure all of us know him. He comes to our meetings.
I was just at Walmart. I'm waiting to get my tires done. So I just
Okay, Randy, you can unmute now, Randy. Thank you. So Steve, I will turn it over to you.
Great. So I guess I should probably ask if folks can see my screen as a first order of business. I got a thumbs up. Outstanding. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me to share some insights on our programs here in the region. We enjoy a great partnership and do a lot of good work together in the transportation space. So I'm going to dive right in here. I have three topics I wanted to touch on. First is just to highlight some of the recent work we've done. It's always, we seem to spend most of our time looking out the windshield, and sometimes it's good to take a peek out the rearview mirror from time to time. So just a couple of prominent projects that we're in the middle of. Then I want to talk a little bit about policy and priorities for the agency, and wrap up with some of the important work we have in the pipeline. So let's dive in here. I like to start with this slide just as a reminder of what we do here in Olympic Region. We are a steward of a lot of assets listed there on the slide. We have a lot of partners, and I think most importantly, we have about 1.8 million people who want and need the transportation system to work for them. So projects, if you're familiar with, a little west of Port Angeles, this is the Elwha River Bridge project. We started this project about a year ago. Girders were set back in November, and we're going to be putting traffic on the new bridge in the June timeframe. In fact, we've kind of set after Memorial Day as the timeframe to do that. It is pretty highly impactful. We have a 9-day period to cut traffic onto the new bridge, where we'll be detouring traffic over 113 and down 112. So we'll be putting out lots of communications about this in advance, but I just wanted to mention that here today. That old bridge, which is almost 100 years old, it has served us well, but I think everybody's going to be much happier with the new bridge out there. And then I wanted to highlight Eagle Creek. This is the fish barrier job in the Blinn area that we completed this August. Huge shout out to the community. I know this was very impactful. It was one of our get in, get out fast projects where we took 101 down to alternating one-way traffic for 5 days. Got off to a rough start, but by the time it was done, I think folks had adjusted to the impact. So very appreciative of the community. That project got done in a very efficient way. And the last project I'll highlight, Hood Canal Bridge. It seems I've worked for the agency a long time, and I can't remember a time when we're not working on the Hood Canal Bridge. But the center lock replacement, while it's not finished, what you see in that picture, the centering pyramids that hold the movable spans together, we were able to get those rehabilitated this summer and worked with the community to make some adjustments to our schedule. And I think at the end of the day, it turned out as well as could be expected. All right, turning to some policy priorities. Don't expect you to read that slide. Unless you like reading RCWs, but those are the policy goals for the Department of Transportation. Preservation and safety has always been a priority, but a couple sessions ago, the legislature made a point of pointing out that preservation and safety were above all the other priorities. So I just wanted to remind everybody, these are the guiding principles we have here at WashDOT, and I'm going to tie this together with a conversation about complete streets here in a few minutes. Because they do tie together. Safe systems approach. If you haven't heard about this, you will. The Federal Highway Administration and WashDOT and many jurisdictions around the state have adopted a safe systems approach. It's really a way it builds on the foundation that humans make errors and are quite vulnerable, whether they're in their cars or not in their cars. And safe systems strive to account for decision-making through redundancy, reducing speeds, basically helping with eliminating those vulnerabilities. And it's a process, a way forward with safety that we're embracing at the department, really focused on removing conflicts, reducing speeds, and really getting the number of crashes and serious injury accidents we're having on our highways. I think we're all aware those trends are up. We want to get those trends going in the other direction and eventually down to zero. And complete streets. So thinking about safety and those policy goals, complete streets is a new statute, came out 22 session. And the RCW is listed there on the page. I'm not going to read everything on that page, but this kind of highlights what complete streets is all about for the department. The real important takeaway for us here at WashDOT is it applies to all projects over $500,000, which is just about every project that we do. And when I was here last year, I think complete streets was fairly new. I think I made mention of it. We're really starting to roll our sleeves up. We have a team actually in our planning department that is dedicated to doing pre-design on complete streets. What's new that I would share is we do not have the funding to implement complete streets. So we're mandated to advance complete streets with our projects, but the funding isn't always there. For example, I'm going to talk about a paving project here in a minute. Our paving program didn't receive an increase, so we're trying to make hard decisions on which of the complete street elements that make sense to make our system, our transportation system, more accessible and safer for all users. So we're embarking on a deferment process internally here, kind of a decision-making process that allows us to identify what we can afford to do and then defer until funding's available the balance of the complete street priorities that we have. So it is being evaluated on just about every project we do, and preservation projects are ideally suited to complete streets. And in theory, we will go around and repave the entire system in 15 or 20 years. So those are the types of projects that you'll see the most complete street elements being incorporated under paving projects. We do have standalone safety projects that we do as well, but primarily paving projects is where you're going to see a lot of the complete street improvements. And speaking of preservation, I threw this slide in at the last minute. I wanted to make a point on preservation. I think if you catch the State of Transportation speech from Roger Millar, or over the last 3 or 4 years, you've heard about the condition of our assets around the state, our paving assets, our bridge assets. 40% we're funding at about 40% of the need, which if you look at that in dollars, we're about $1 billion short annually to meet all of our bridge and pavement preservation needs around the state. And for perspective, here in Olympic region, 41% of our lane miles of pavement are now due or past due for investment. That doesn't mean they're in poor condition. It means 41% of our pavements are at a point in their life where repaving them would be the lowest life cycle cost approach. So when we wait, if pavement goes past due, the cost to rehabilitate it starts to go up rather quickly, from double the cost to triple the cost, that sort of thing. And right now, just up here in the Peninsula counties, we have about 52 projects. That's both bridges and pavements that we can't afford to move forward at this point. All right, so let's talk about projects, what we have in the pipeline. And I put this project up front because it relates closely to what I just spoke about on Complete Streets. We have a paving project that is currently unfunded for construction because of what I just talked about, but will be going to construction hopefully in the next couple of years. And so our pre-design team is embarking on looking at what Complete Streets would look like along this corridor. There's two sections. There's a section from the Walmart area there at Colonel's Way over to Shore Road, I think it's about a 5-mile segment. And then there's a piece from Kitchen Dick to Simdars. So we're looking at these jointly as a combined project. And what you see here on this screen are some of the preliminary findings from the early work we've done. We have a lot of work left to do getting out in the community. We're planning to have an online open house in late March to gather more input. But as you can see here, when it says current strategies there in the upper right-hand corner, those are the things we think we can afford to do in conjunction with the paver. The future strategies, going back to what I said about deferring Complete Streets, those are the things we have identified as making the corridor safer for all users and more accessible for all users, but we can't necessarily afford to do in conjunction with the paver. And then, and so the strategy right now is roundabout at Old Olympic Highway, and making some sidewalk and pedestrian crossing improvements at Colonel's Way. And then moving over to the section in SQUIM, similar here, we have strategies we would like to move forward. Granted, we need to have more dialogue with the community on getting feedback on these, but we're thinking of another roundabout at what is that, Gilbert, Taylor cutoff on one side, Gilbert on the other, and some other improvements throughout the corridor at Mill Road, a two-phase crossing there for pedestrians. And the reason we're looking at a lot of pedestrian improvements is because we do have a history of pedestrian injuries on this corridor. It's also a transit corridor that gets a fair amount of use. So there's a lot going into what we're looking at, and looking forward to having more conversation on this in the future. And then I'm going to go down to the Gorst area. So I think you all remember, we received a sizable investment from the legislature to start looking at moving forward with implementing some of the improvements in Gorst. Right now, we're hiring a consultant. As you look at this timeline from left to right, we're in the middle of consultant procurement. I think we're pretty close. And then we'll launch into what we call a PEL process, which stands for Planning Environmental Linkage. It's really doing a lot of the heavy lifting and being able to take credit for that heavy, all that analysis we do. We can take credit for that in the NEPA process when we want to move forward with design and the environmental document. So work's getting underway. We're a couple years away from having NEPA, SEPA, and through that process, we'll be identifying alternatives and certainly working closely with the community on what that looks like. And in the freight corridor, we actually had an open house, I think, earlier this week on our environmental assessment out there. We're getting close to getting across the finish line, if you will, with the freight corridor. Right now, construction is anticipated to start in early 2026. It's about a $70 million investment at this point, and it's going to bring really incredible improvements. We think it's going to take about 25% of the traffic out of downtown Belfair for those travelers who don't wish to drive through town. So pretty excited to get this project moving forward. And then I highlighted this project. We received a proviso in the budget last session to make, we have $9.7 million to make specifically maintenance and preservation improvements on Highway 112, which is arguably the state highway in Olympic region that has the highest need. The condition of that highway is a concern. It's very slide prone. And so we are working with the community on the highest and best use of that money, because $9.7 million is not going to solve all of the problems on SR 112. Right now, the strategy that we're deploying is to spend about half of the money on pavement, primarily out on the west end where the pavement condition is the worst, but also to invest in some roadside safety hardware, some signing, and there are some culverts that are beyond their useful life. Some of them have actually failed, that is contributing to the roadway problems. So we think 10 or so culverts could also be, non-fish bearing culverts could be replaced with this project. Anticipated construction next year. And then over to Simdar's interchange, fully funded at this point. We have not initiated design yet. We are in conversation with the city and the county on getting a head start on this, but nothing has quite come together yet. But super exciting project, particularly for safety benefits on US 101, where we can eliminate two intersections potentially with the frontage road improvements. So looking forward to this project as well. And I wanted to put a shout out. This summer, we will be constructing roundabouts at Paradise Bay Road, just off the west end of the Hood Canal Bridge, and also at the SR 19, SR 104 intersection. Those will be both constructed this summer. And then my last slide, I wanted to just show you, I think last year I showed you our 2023 construction map. This is the 2024 version. And if last year was busy, this one was probably a little busier, although I think the impacts, some of the high impact projects are not as prevalent this year. Most of the projects you see there will be maintaining lane count in most places. But lots of work, a lot of fish passage work, and that's going to be a theme for the next decade, I think, as we continue to meet our fish barrier obligations to restore 90% of the habitat by 2030. And that is what I prepared for you today. But I think I'm much more interested in answering any questions if I can. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. First of all, Steve, thanks so much for you and WashDOT being so flexible last year on the Hood Canal Bridge interlock project. I know that was difficult. I really think it helped. The way it was done really helped local businesses in our area. And these are great slides. Do you have any? Would you be willing to share the slide deck with us?
Oh, of course, I can send it out after. Who should I send that to, Beck?
If you send it to Thera will get it out to all of us.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
And we're
Hey,
not going
Steve,
to.
this is Randy Neville, and I just wanted to give you a compliment on your staff. We did just have that open house in Belfair. They stayed till the very end. They started almost 45 minutes early because people were there, and they just all needed a pat on the back for what they did. And I thought I'd share that with you. Thanks, Steve.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you. We'll hear from Marty and then Kate.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, that's great on all those projects that the state is doing, the roundabouts especially, because I really like roundabouts because of all the, it really helps with not having fatal crashes and everything, and plus it just helps traffic flow and everything, and the low maintenance costs and everything. That is just totally great. I just wanted to make a suggestion. I've been commuting through Mason. I go through the back roads to get home after work or go to work, commute. And Mason Lake Road and SR3. I don't know if that would be a good candidate for a roundabout, but it would probably sure help because during the commute, there's a lot of cars that are waiting to turn onto the highway, and it's really busy at that time of day. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
Thank
know
you.
Pickering is the next intersection out there we have targeted for a roundabout, but I'll check and see where Mason Lake is.
Kate?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Steve. I'll heap on the thanks for your responsiveness on the Hood Canal Bridge last summer. I'm wondering, I'm also a big fan of roundabouts, and I think we've made some progress in getting our folks to understand the need for them, especially as we've seen more and more fatalities on 104. But can you help me understand in the more kind of urban roundabouts where you have a lot of bike and pedestrian users? What is kind of the latest thinking and design on those? We have a new one in Port Townsend that's just causing a lot of confusion with pedestrians and bike users, and concern about safety, and the whole point is to not stop the flow of traffic, that then pedestrians create a, kind of surprise element that isn't feeling safe, especially in an older community. So can you just help me understand kind of how WashDOT is thinking about those?
Thinking about roundabouts from a safety standpoint?
Yeah, in high pedestrian and bicycle use areas.
Yeah.
And
So
like I said, when we're trying to convince folks that roundabouts keep them moving, and then when you have a lot of pedestrians, it changes it just adds complexity that I think has been hard for our residents to understand.
yeah, it's there's always trade-offs with intersection control, whether it's a signal or a roundabout. From a pure safety standpoint, roundabouts, from WashDOT's perspective, it is the intersection of choice for that very reason, for safety alone. Bicyclists, it's a mixed perspective. Some will say they like the predictability of hitting the button if they need to, or going with traffic through a signalized intersection. They feel safer, they feel more comfortable. Others are fine with either riding through a roundabout or using the bike facilities that some roundabouts come with. It's a challenge for us. It's always a trade-off. But where there's a lot of pedestrians, we find that roundabouts are still the safer option from a data standpoint. They are still the safest option for that vehicle pedestrian interface. And the Kearney roundabout, we still have quite a bit of work to do out there with rapid flashing beacons and some of the striping. So I think some of the concerns are going to get alleviated when we get done.
Do you happen to know the timeline on those continued improvements?
Some of it's weather dependent, so it may take a few months.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Wendy?
Hi, Steve. Great to see you here.
Yeah.
I was going to mention again the Complete Streets program, and how interesting that it is that you've dedicated a whole team to set up some of the conceptual designs, and it really does help with the community outreach and just informing all the RTPO participants. I was surprised that you selected the Taylor Cutoff Road intersection as an example of what can be done in the Carlsford area. And I just would like you to maybe go back and revisit that when you're doing a project that starts off being a preservation project in the area, that you're also looking at creating bus zones, curb and gutter, sidewalks, other things that accompany the roundabout, that helps your pedestrian and bicycles. And it's just not about eliminating an intersection, left-hand turns, and creating a space where pedestrians can get across the highway.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a balancing act. We're trying to figure out what's the highest and best use of, we can afford about $20 million between these two projects. So how do we invest that? And that's where we need feedback, just like you're providing, Wendy. We are flexible. This was our initial first look at it. And it's really data driven, where a lot of the pedestrian generators are coming from, that sort of thing. So we are open to the conversation. I do not expect what we have here is where we will necessarily land.
Okay. And if I can follow up with just one more question for you. First, though, I will try to boost you up that you were about ready to say pedestrian fatalities and you backed away and said serious injuries. There was a fatality in that vicinity of Taylor Cutoff Road, Mill Road area. So it is an important issue to tackle those risk levels. But my question is how do you discern between doing a 2-lane roundabout and a 1-lane roundabout? Your pictorial graphic of the Shine Road Paradise Bay looks really snappy and spiffy, and the other ones are just in more of an early stage, but it seems like they will be, the two different styles of roundabouts will be received differently because one is a lot easier to navigate than the other. How do you discern between the two levels?
Yeah, so I'm not a traffic engineer, but it really our traffic folks, they model the performance using fancy model software like Cedra. I think it's called Cedra. I'm not sure what it's called, but they model it and they try to. There are places where we will design a roundabout as 1 lane with the ability to expand it to 2 if it's right on the cusp of the performance we're looking for. But it's really performance of vehicular traffic, the level of service, if you will, that makes the decision on whether it's 1 lane or 2. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
great.
Marty?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit. I was listening to Wendy also. I just wanted to say that I know that fatalities are not good, but it does help with, like, if you're doing a project, because I had a project I did, it was I put in some guardrail and there was a fatality crash at this spot, and it helped with the moving things forward with WASDOT and everything, so that could probably help the case of getting some work done there. And also, I just wanted to say that one of the reasons I like roundabouts too is, like, we're talking about pedestrian safety, and actually the roundabout does help because the main road, the one that has some more traffic going through, the AADT, more traffic, it forces them to slow down at the roundabout. So I can see where that really helps with the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists also. Just wanted to throw that out there, so thank you.
Yeah, it does. And the traffic analysis we're seeing with some of these proposed roundabouts on 101 is the challenge is not the main line. It's the side streets can't get out safely. I mean, we're at level of service F on some of the side streets, and we put a roundabout in, it goes up to level of service A. And I think we all know what happens when people get impatient trying to find a gap at an unsignalized intersection. That's where some of the crashes occur, and usually those are pretty severe. So slowing speeds down at these intersections and still maintaining the capacity, which roundabouts do, we think it's going to help a lot with those side streets being able to access, particularly as growth occurs, right? I mean, from a land use standpoint, more trips are going to be coming from the side streets as the area continues to grow. So.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any more questions or comments for Steve? Mike?
So I just want to really quickly say one thing with respect about that last comment about growth. Just to be careful where we're thinking about that growth, because some of these roundabouts are occurring in rural areas where there is no urban growth area, where there is no city. So the Carlsberg example is a great example of what you're talking about, where there's potential for growth, there's an urban growth area, there's urban services. Some of the other ones are happening where there's not that. And so my concern as a county commissioner is we have this area between Port Angeles and Sequim where I don't want to see it become clogged along the highway with more growth. And if we're putting in roundabouts and saying this is an opportunity for growth, I don't think that's correct. So just one little caveat on what you just said. But thank you for all your help. And I would also say, many of us are very thankful for WashDOT's ambitious construction programs over these next few years because you're buoying our sales tax revenue. So thank you.
Happy to help.
Is there anyone else who has questions or comments for Steve?
Beck, I apologize for jumping in. My
Oh.
Zoom app isn't giving me a raise hand, so I'm just
Okay.
trying it on my image. Steve, a number of us were very supportive of roundabouts. I think everyone who's commented, but I don't know that the public perception is as supportive as the PRTPO board. So I'm wondering if there's a way for us to strategize on public outreach and education, especially with new roundabouts coming online this year and over the next few years. Is there a way that we can use, what's happening on the ground and the education communication strategy together? And as the likely incoming chair of the PRTPO, I'm interested in thinking about how we as a group come together in person for more field trips, and thinking the roundabouts might be the space where we do that. So I'd love to collaborate as we go forward.
Yeah, we'd welcome that conversation. We're going to be doing the paving project that I highlighted here. I think it's going to be very important for us to do exactly what you're talking about, because there doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground when it comes to roundabouts. You either love them or you don't. And we've got some coming on 104 out at, as I mentioned, Paradise Bay and 19 that I think are going to set a little bit of a tone for what people can expect. But for sure, I mean, as we go forward with our online open house for the 101 pavers, open to ideas on how we can get better at sharing the benefits and the trade-offs that come with roundabouts. So,
Okay. Also, I would like to acknowledge Brenda. And Brenda, I know it's Brenda Johnson. I'm not sure of the other name, but Brenda is new to us at this meeting, and she's a council person from Bainbridge Island. And you have a question or a comment for Steve?
I do have a question. I apologize for being late and I just had dental work, so it's kind of puffy and I feel like I have two faces, but thank you. And I appreciate the introduction. And my name is Brenda Fantroy Johnson. I'm hyphenated, it's long and it's complicated. But the question that I have, because on the map I see the roundabout on Bainbridge Island on Ada's Well, and the comments were about how to get the public, perception, have a better perception of what's happening. And I think because I live right where the roundabout is going on Ada's Well, some of the perception in our cul-de-sac and some of the questions that we have center around really not knowing the process of what's happening when the construction comes in, when they start digging. And the problem that we've been having is the vibrations from the construction and the complaints that I'm getting, because people seem to think because I'm the council person, I have some way to fix all of this, is that how do we get action on the complaints that we have when the cabinets and things are vibrating, and you've been very responsive as far as coming out, putting a vibration meter on one of the homes, but it's just the shock of these things happening that I think the public needs to know the process so they can expect some of these things to happen instead of, shaking in your bed one day and saying, wow, what's going on? So maybe more meetings with the subcontractors who's doing the work and the project managers would be in order.
okay.
Ed?
Hi, I think we have a question on the chat asking about the plans for SR3 North.
What part of SR3 North are we talking about?
This is Wendy Clark-Getson. I just threw that in the chat. I didn't want to take away the answer to Councilwoman Brenda's question before jumping in there with this late question, but we do understand that there is some interest to resolve the congestion on SR3 in Kitsap heading to the Hood Canal Bridge, and that there could potentially be a new roundabout on the east side of the Hood Canal Bridge as a solution. So I was trying to get your comments on the planning process for that.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. And before I do that, Brenda, I'll talk to our project engineer. I think we can do a better job of letting folks. So it's usually the pneumatic rollers that are causing vibrations would be unless we're pile driving, that's the other usual source. But I can ask our project manager. It sounds like having a better understanding of when that's going to occur. We can't stop it. If some soils, those vibrations travel through them pretty easily. So, but having a better understanding of when it's going to occur, we can do a better job of that. So, for sure. So I would, turning to SR3, I would like nothing more than have a roundabout at the east end of the Hood Canal Bridge where that light is, because it would operationally move traffic so much faster through that intersection. There are no plans on the horizon. We don't have any funding for that at this time, but it is certainly on our wish list, because I think it'd be the single best thing we could do for operations on that segment of SR3.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments for Steve? Seeing none, we appreciate very much your time, and this has kind of become an annual event that Steve comes in February and lets us know what we can anticipate for this summer, and then you come again in the fall, I believe, and give us another report, all of which is very useful to us. So thank you very much, Steve. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. You're also welcome to get on with the rest of your day.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and have me back anytime. Be happy to be here, but I do have to run. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Our next agenda item is a recruitment of the Peninsula's RTPO coordinator position. And just as a bit of background, and then I'm turning this over to Ed Coviello. Our lead planning agency is Kitsap Transit, and Kitsap Transit is responsible that the RTPO meets its responsibilities under RCW 4780. In order for Kitsap Transit structure and in order to be our LPA, they have hired Sarah as our coordinator. She is a contract, and her contract is not with the RTPO. It is with Kitsap Transit. So that's just a background. So those of you that think that Sarah works for us, she works for Kitsap Transit. And her assignment with them is to be the coordinator for the RTPO. With that said, Ed, I'm going to turn the discussion over to you.
Thanks for the background, Beck. So the RTPO was restructured back in 2019. And with Kitsap Transit and the RTPO hired 3P Transportation, also known as TheraBlack. It was basically a 2-year contract with 3 one-year options. And we're coming to a close. That was back in August of 2019 that Thera started with us. And that contract will be coming to a close in August of 2024. Therefore, this spring, we need to go out and do a request for proposals. Kitsap Transit has a very robust procurement process, meets all state and federal, local guidelines, regulations. What we're looking for from the board is a couple members, or however many you decide, to participate in the selection of a new or the same contractor to help coordinate and make all this happen for the next 4 to 5 years. And we're hoping to do this probably in April, May timeframe at the latest, bring it to you for the June board. And so I just kind of want to open it up for, who wants to help us select
So what I'm hearing, Ed, you say that you would like 2, 3 members of our board to work with Kitsap Transit to develop the RFP and help with the selection process, or just the selection process?
Just the selection process.
Okay.
We have the RFP ready to go, almost ready to go. We just have to kind of dust off the last one. Unless you see something wrong with the scope of services that we're getting right now. And basically we have a sheet for each of the companies or people that apply. You go through and there's a scoring process. It's fairly simple, and then we can also discuss if needed. Yeah, we can do that in the spring and have hopefully have a similar contract structure, or if you want to change it. Right now it's every 2 years, and then with 3 1-year extensions.
Okay. Okay. And I will also let the group know that when Kitsap Transit went through this process in 2019, the executive committee had an interview session with the candidates, and we filled out evaluation forms and gave them to Kitsap Transit. We did not engage in conversation with Kitsap Transit. We just simply filled out our evaluation forms and gave them. So I see Marty has his hand raised. Are you asking a question, or are you volunteering?
I'm volunteering. I have experience with the selection process of things in my current job, and I helped with the last one that we did. I can't remember. It was like a couple of years ago, I think, where we were doing some project things or something, where we were evaluating. So I wouldn't mind helping with that.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Is there anyone else, Lindsay, who would like to volunteer?
It's a lot
Not
of
sure why you
fun.
mentioned my name there, Beck.
I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it. It's a good experience. So it's good to see how.
Okay, Kate, are you volunteering, or are you having questions?
Yeah, I'd be glad to help out.
Okay, is there anyone else who would be glad to help out?
We can make it work with 2.
Okay.
And then we have a 3 staff here do it. That way we have an odd number.
Okay, Wendy has her hand up. Are you volunteering also, Wendy?
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
there you've got 3.
Perfect.
Okay, is that all
And I'll
you?
be in touch.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you. Our next agenda item, and we are running ahead of schedule, this is good, is and this is a national issue, or state issue, statewide issue. And that is the RTPO base funding program. And I'm not sure if you were going to take this, Sarah. Basically, we discussed this at our last meeting, and the RTPOs statewide have gotten basically the same amount of money since RTPOs were originally established in the early 1990s. There was a small increase in like 2004. And the money is divided among the 17 RTPOs. And there is, as we all know, costs have increased, and those funding dollars are not going very far right now. So this is a statewide conversation. We discussed it a bit at our December meeting. And did you put my letter in here? And we did send letters to our legislators, but we believe that it's important to have more of a strategy moving forward on this. So Sarah, did you want to take that, or did Lindsay want to take it? I know that we had talked about this at our executive committee meeting.
I would, I'll start it, and just to
Please.
give a lay of the land in terms of what
Okay.
has happened since we brought this to you in
Right.
December. And just to remind, this was the first time it had come to you, was in December. That might have been the first time many of you even heard that there's an issue. And so PRTPO is funded with monies that come from WashDOT headquarters that are established in state law. RTPOs were created as a part of the Growth Management Act and were received, enabling legislation and funding right at the get-go. Well, that hasn't changed very much, as Beck said, in the last 30 years. And you are operating today on a budget that's just about the same as what you had in 2004, which is a challenge. And to be fair, you're probably doing more today than you were doing maybe in 2004. So it might be easy to think that there's more funding capacity than there really is. But as that last conversation indicated, PRTPO has to hire somebody to, or Kitsap Transit hires somebody to support PRTPO, and Kitsap Transit's ability to do that going forwards is going to be constrained if it doesn't have enough money to make that attractive to contractors to come in and do this work. So that's sort of from PRTPO's position, but there are also, every RTPO in the state is struggling with this. And the large urban ones have been subsidizing their RTPO funding from the state with federal funds that they receive directly from the federal government for what they do as MPOs, so like PSRC and Thurston Regional. So they've been augmenting their RTPO funding with some of that money, and they've also been augmenting their RTPO budgets with the STBG funds that they administer. Now, PRTPO doesn't administer those. Rural counties do that in rural regions, but in urban regions, that's done by the RTPO or MPO. And so they've augmented their funding with that. You don't have that, nor do most of the other rural RTPOs. And so it's really sort of come to a head over this last year that every single rural RTPO in the state, every single RTPO in the state, but especially the rural ones, are really hamstrung. Expectations are going up about participating in state processes. So when when WashDOT is having meetings about the highway system plan or complete streets or consolidated grants or any of those things, PRTPO is invited to participate. And I go on your behalf and I try to represent the issues of these things that we hear and to inform those state plans and processes. That takes resources. There's more of that on the horizon. And what we're currently, for those of you who've been around, you might have wondered where the coordinator's report went. That's one of those things that we've had to eliminate because we just don't have the resources. You have about 76 hours a month of staff time. And so we have to be really judicious about what we do with that. Additional funding allows you to think a little bit bigger about what you do, why you do it, how you would do it. And that'll feed into the next conversation as well. But I wanted to let you know that there are RTPOs around the state that are all trying to organize. Beck's outreach at the beginning of the legislative session generated interest on the part of policymakers. They asked for specifics on bills, and that's when all the RTPOs said, we're really good at advocating for our members. We don't really know how to advocate for ourselves. So we weren't quite ready, I would say, as a collection of RTPOs. We weren't quite ready to make the run that we made this year with the legislative outreach, but we learned a lot as a type of an entity about how to do this the next go around. And so I think, Lindsay, I'm going to punt to you about what PRTPO, how PRTPO wants to participate in this going forward in a more thoughtful way instead of sort of the shotgun approach that we came to you with in December. And I think we're contemplating a small working group to come back with a recommendation to the board. So I'll pass the baton to you.
Yeah, thanks for foreshadowing the ask there, Thera. We're looking for people who want to work through this year and into the 2025 legislative session to try to get our funding adequate for what we need to do and what we're expected to do as transportation planning organizations. I think part of the dynamic that Thera hinted at here is the larger ones would like the smaller ones to lead the effort because we're great advocates as small regional transportation or planning organizations, and yet we don't have the resources to lead that effort. So it's that classic problem that we see in rural areas. What this probably means for us is, as the PRTPO, explaining to our lawmakers in our whole region during interim, not during session, what we need and what our ask is, building up budget proviso ask or potentially a bill, and then being ready to have that in 2025. I think what we can all do now as well is start to talk to our respective statewide associations. So as a city council member, that's the Association of Washington Cities. For transportation, that's WASHTA, the Washington Association of Counties, the Port Association, et cetera, and let those organizations know that this is something that we're going to need so that we can get this into the legislative agendas that those associations are building over the summer into the fall, into the 2025 legislative session. So I think we're ready to say who's interested in helping with this advocacy effort, basically assessing our current plan and figuring out how we move this forward and not just wait till November and say, oh, shoot, we're going to need a lot more money to keep this thing going.
Okay, who would
Beck,
be
can you do
willing?
that thing where you call on people?
Yeah, I know. See, and we have a whole bunch of new people here this time too, or not a whole bunch, but a few. I do think it's important because I'm not sure we as individual members totally understand our budget. The RTPO has always done our budget in that this is how much money we get and how can we most efficiently and effectively use that money. Perhaps an exercise of this group would be to say, these are the things we would really like to do and what would it cost us to do that. I think we also have to, which I don't know what I should say or not say, but I know that, I do know that Thera provides her services to us at probably, I'm going to say, I think if we were to go out and hire someone other than 3P Transportation, we would be paying again, probably 40% more than we are now. And I think we have to be realistic about what our dollars will buy us in future contracts. Kate?
Yeah, I'm curious, and Lindsay, maybe this is a question for you or for others who have been involved in this conversation to date. But I'm just hearing so much uncertainty about the transportation budget because of increased costs of existing projects, as well as the natural climate solutions going to, ballot initiative this fall, which could really affect the funding of Move Ahead Washington. So just curious, are you thinking about kind of all of the big contingencies that are kind of on the same timeline that you've proposed here?
Yeah, to take that question, I think nothing is going to be certain or predictable about the state budget until after the results of the November 5th election, because of both the Climate Commitment Act being on that ballot and then also the capital gains tax. And both of those are enough of a hole in the already sinking ship of the state budget that nobody's going to make any commitment until after that. But I think we lay out our case, and then in November, obviously, if those initiatives pass, meaning that those state funding programs get cut, then I think we have to reassess what we're going to do. But that's a world that is going to be a lot worse than the current funding disaster we have in Washington State.
Yeah, and the amount, I imagine that we're talking here, increase to base funding for the TPOs is, probably still a rounding error in the budgets we're talking about. But I just have been told to be so kind of conservative in thinking about additional asks. But all that said, I'm happy to help out, and I have not been a very active member of this for the last couple of years, which I feel badly about. I've just had a number of conflicts that I've tried to clear recently. So I will make up for that by volunteering for this subcommittee as well.
Gary?
Just a question. Would it make sense for all the rural RTPOs to collectively get together to be able to afford to hire a paid lobbyist to represent the interests? Even though the budget is always talked about as not being sufficient, there is and has been this last several years more money flowing into the state than ever has been before from a lot of sources. And I think having a voice there to express the importance of the RTPO can make a big difference. It is always important for members of the RTPO to go talk to state legislators, but having a full-time lobbyist to represent our interests can pay big dividends too.
Just as a point of interest, Gary, just to give you a little more background, the rural RTPOs, well, they have their own separate meeting, and I'm not sure how often they meet, and Thera does chair that meeting. There's also an MPO RTPO meeting that's held quarterly, and that group of just the RTPOs and MPOs meet one day, and then they meet with DOT the following day. So they do get together. I think the issue with what you're talking about would be funding a lobbyist.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's money's available, what that source would be. I see that Christine Rolfus just joined us. And Christine, we're talking about, I'm not sure when you actually got in, but we're talking about the base funding for the RTPOs. And statewide, the RTPOs are feeling that they need more money. And we are talking about putting together a small group to evaluate the situation and determine the best way for the Peninsula RTPO to move forward and engage in that activity. Because you are a former state legislator, would you be willing to serve on that committee?
Sure.
Thank you. Was that what you wanted me to do, Lindsay?
That was
Yeah,
with
that was
no
perfect.
enthusiasm, but I understand that the responsibility. Yes, I will do that.
Is there
That
anyone
was
else?
awesome. I just gotta say that was awesome. If we're gonna have her step up, I'll step up again and be a part of it. This is
Okay.
Randy. Good, that was awesome.
Are you interested, Gary?
I think I've got a bit of a full plate and I don't want to
Okay.
overextend myself,
Okay, thank you.
but thank you.
Yeah, Ben, are you interested?
I feel the same as Gary there. I would like to, I don't feel like I'd be a very efficient value to this, but I could keep
Okay.
learning more about it.
Okay.
Somebody can still twist my arm, but I don't know if I'd
Right.
offers.
Okay, well, we appreciate Christine and Kate stepping forward today to work with Lindsay and I will say-
Randy and Randy.
and Randy, right. So we've got three. And
Beck,
and-
before you close this, I think most of this committee is county commissioners. I'm a city council member also on the.
oh, right.
It'd be great if we had somebody from one of our tribes, or one of our ports, I think. Or am I missing anyone else?
Okay, Lindsay, this is what I have done in the past, and this will be hopefully up to you moving forward, is I will make contact with people privately.
Get
I
ready
was
for the Beck
wondering-
attack.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any way I could cajole Gary into joining us because he's a little bit
more right of center than Kate and I think it would be a healthy discussion to have him included with Randy, me, and Kate. Gary, what do you think? Come on.
Well, I'm flattered, and um, if if it's important that I be there, you feel it's important, then I will do it.
Thank you. And we at this point don't know when the meetings will be. I'm assuming there'll be Zoom meetings, and I'm sure we will find times that are convenient for everyone. And we typically don't have meetings that last longer than an hour. So it'll see how your discussions go. And so anyway, we will leave it with that. We have Lindsay, Kate, Gary, Randy, and Christine. Sounds like a powerful group to me. So thank you very, very much. Now, moving on down our agenda, we're to the RTPO portion of the the RTP, our Rural Transportation Plan. And Sarah, we're going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. And hopefully you are seeing a presentation about tough topics and deeper dives. And what we're going to talk about this morning is identify a handful of topics that you all are going to look at in more detail over this year with the intent of coming up with some recommendations in the Regional Transportation Plan that about a year from now we will be taking out for public review. And so these tough topics that we're talking about, they came up from the work that you all have done over these last few years, come out of the Transportation Outlook legislative agenda that you produce every summer, the early every fall, you start on in the summer, the early discussions we've had about the RTP. So the things that we are talking about aren't just brand new. For the most part, they're really coming up and evolved from your work. And I'm calling them tough topics for this purpose because they're big, they're tough, they're gnarly issues, they're bigger than any one of you. And frankly, some of the comments we got in the poll that we asked you all to do suggest that they're bigger than PRTPO. And what I hope to do is show you that actually, despite the conversation we just had about lack of resources, that they're not bigger than PRTPO to take on. So in thinking about what your function is, your role in carrying out the long-range transportation plan, I want to highlight the assets that you have as an organization. You have 27 active members who have a 30-year history, a longer than 30-year history of working together, collaborating on issues and across governments. And even though you don't have a lot of resources, you are a state-designated regional transportation planning organization. And with that comes sort of an official standing, and even though they're small, some resources to do something with. Now, you also, by mandate, you have certain functions, you plan for the future, you convene stakeholders, you engage with each other around a pretty remarkable table, this really big regional table. And you are not an owner operator of the system. Each of you in your individual day-to-day capacities are as cities, counties, tribes, transit, ports. But together here, you're something a little bit different. You operate at this little bit higher level, and it's all about coordination and collaboration. And so when we think about that, when we think about what your resources are, your assets, your functions, I think that there really are a lot of opportunities, and we can look just at the work program that you've done over these last few years to get an understanding of that, with that whether it's the legislative agenda that you put forward and the engagement that you do there, letters of support from the Regional Transportation Planning Organization matter for our members, in their individual pursuits. There's just a lot of work that you do that maybe doesn't seem that important, but all taken together, it really does point to the importance of PRTPO and its potential as a catalyst for change. So those of you who were with us in December, you know that I had brought to you a poll. It was a SurveyMonkey little poll asking you, we had taken all these topics, these tough topics, made 20 statements, and asked you to let us know what you think about them. Should we look at them closer in what we're calling a deep dive in this RTP? Do you agree, disagree, or don't really care one way or the other? And I really want to clarify, as I did with the Technical Advisory Committee, that when you see that people disagree that this is something for a deeper dive, and this was borne out in the comments we received, it doesn't mean that it's not important. It just means that this is not something right now that should be a priority. If we can only do a deep dive on a handful of topics, this isn't the topic to spend that time on right now. So with that, here are the results, and those are included in your packet as well. It might be hard to read on the screen. And the lines represent just first cut at sort of seeing what I look like to me of some ways of, strata of these in terms of importance. And I took this list to the Technical Advisory Committee in January to get their feedback on it and test some ideas. For example, to me, when I look at this, I see these two here as being really kind of related, and especially in light of Steve's briefing earlier about how we think about Main Street retrofits, complete streets, renewed emphasis on safety. The other thing that I see when I look in here in the TAC agreed is that we've got 3 different ferry topics. Ferries is a big issue. It's vitally important. And again, PRTPO is tiny. There's not a lot PRTPO can do, but by taking a look at these in a little bit deeper in a coordinated fashion, there might be some logical things that would make sense to you all, say a year from now, of saying that this is something that we could lean into or follow up on. And then the other one that jumps out at me as being related enough to sort of group them in our thinking are the 2 topics related to EVs. One, just that the importance of EV readiness for the region, but also recognizing that electric vehicles are powered both by battery electric and by hydrogen fuel cell. And this is a rapidly changing world. We're talking 2050. A lot's going to be happening in this arena between now and then. These 2 probably make sense to look at together as well. So when we do that, kind of what I see, and the TAC was comfortable with this, they agreed with this, is that there are a couple of things that we could sort of think of as stay the course. Don't need to do a deep dive on these. We're already supporting these things in our work program, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then there were sort of 5 other topics that we talked about as being potential deep dive candidates. And so you see those listed here, the importance of intercity long distance bus travel. How do we better support that, promote that, advance that? Ferries and marine highways, and that'll get fleshed out. Hood Canal Bridge, regional resilience, and safe main streets for all. And then the one that I would float with you that I did not raise with the TAC at the time, but based on some of the questions that came up in the poll, as well as conversations that have come up elsewhere, like in the executive committee about going forwards, what should PRTPO as an organization be aiming for? To me, that seems like something that merits a deep dive as a part of this RTP. What is your role? What do you want your role to be going forward? So that's sort of the list as I looked at this, and the TAC agreed. Now, what does it mean to stay the course? So what we're going to be fleshing out this year, we've got some examples that we can look to from our work today. Staying the course, we'll work on terms of things, but defederalizing small local projects. There's a great example of one that we just sort of figured it out as we went. But what we did there was, there was a lot of education, developing, just within your meeting structures. We don't have the resources to do anything big and flashy outside of that, but just within the Technical Advisory Committee and Executive Board meetings, developing broader understanding, increasing local awareness of the flexibilities inherent in the funding already, establishing working relationships, and then, educating legislators. And we heard in winter of 2023, this time last year, we heard that allies like the Association of Washington Counties was getting a little bit of better traction in this regard on the federal funding swap program, because this region's legislators had heard about that and they knew that that was important to the region, catalyst for change. The other one, the EV, rural EV and fuel cell electric vehicle readiness. What we're doing right now, what you've been doing over the last few years, is supporting that. We've got this, we do webinars, periodic webinars on topics, and we maintain a stakeholder group that's much, much larger. We've got about 85 different organizations participating on that from across the Peninsula region, as well as Grays Harbor and the island regions. And I think even Thurston Regional is dialed into that. We've sort of stuck our nose into activities that other organizations are doing regarding hydrogen and the hydrogen hub. And we've also provided input to state agencies about, we hear back from you all what what issues are, what the challenges are, and we pass that information along to state agencies. And I will tell you that we're still waiting for the federal appropriation to come down, but you will be hearing shortly about a multi-million-dollar electric vehicle charging award that's coming to the Olympic Peninsula as a result of this effort, and partnering up with Energy Northwest, who was looking for liaisons, and then this PRTPO provided that liaison opportunity. So all PRTPO did was set the table, invite people to come together, for them to network, give them information, and then they made the connections to make stuff happen. So these are two examples to keep in mind as we go forward and think about how we might approach the other things. So deep dive follow-up, if the board would agree with this, these are sort of 6 topics that we could flesh out and bring back to you in April. I think these are the kinds of questions that we would want to be asking. And these would take different formats. Each of these little scoping sessions would be a little bit different, I think, given the topics. But what a deep dive is not, it's as I say in the report, I think it's going to feel sort of superficial to some of you who really want to get deep into data analysis. We don't have those resources, but we can bring subject matter experts to the table who can give you, I'm going to say, a good enough understanding of issues to have a sense of what the logical, likely, productive next steps would be. And so I guess my question to you for the rest of this discussion this morning is, are these the right topics to explore in depth? Is there something on this list that you think doesn't belong here? Is there something missing that you think should be on here? And if I can get sort of affirmation from you this morning that these, whatever the right topics are, then I will be working to bring back to you in April sort of a roadmap and a little tiny scope, if you would, for each of these, about how we would plan to approach these, what sort of the concept is for you to respond to in April. And we're just going to keep clicking through these. At each meeting this year, we'll be tackling another one of these. So choose carefully, because you're going to see these later on your agenda. So just to facilitate your conversation, Beck, I'm going to stop sharing this now, but I could bring it back up again if I need to. So thank you, and I'll turn it over for your questions and discussion.
Thank you. Gary? You're muted, Gary.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
I'm glad to see the ferry system listed as one of the items on there. Recently, if you're not aware, the PSRC enacted a committee to shine a light on the ferry system, and along with Representative Nance, who is really shining a big light on the problems with the ferry system. And we could lend our voice to that effort and help out. It needs every voice possible, especially on this side of the water. In the past, we haven't had much support from the Seattle, King County, Snohomish County area, Pierce County in this regard. And that's probably why it hasn't got enough traction. But now there is some support from that side of the water. And it's a good time to jump on the bandwagon.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Lindsay?
The great thing about transportation is it connects all these other issues and places and things together. And so I'm hesitant about throwing this item on the list because it's not specific to transportation, but yet it is entirely about transportation, which is our land use patterns and growth management practices, and where we're building walkable neighborhoods and where we are keeping rural areas rural. I think Mike mentioned this in our conversation with Steve at WashDOT earlier in this meeting that, some of those interchanges along Highway 101 between Port Angeles and Sequim are not intended for more growth. So how are we planning our transportation system in light of our land use system and vice versa? So I'd like to think about it more as a connected issue. But I also don't want us to stray as the transportation planning organization away from that. And yet I don't think we can do that without talking about land use.
Yeah.
So a question, Chair. Lindsay just referred to connected, and I totally agree with that. And the literal translation of what the legislature adopted is connected to internet and broadband. When's an appropriate moment to talk about multimodal specific to broadband, Chair?
I think now you'll notice I don't know if you have your packet, but broadband was one of the topics, and it was down a ways. Should we say it didn't make it above the fold?
Yeah.
But if you want to suggest that now, I think it's one of those, from my perspective, it's kind of like the defederalizing the small rural projects and the EV. We have, it is, we've done work in that area, and I think we keep it up there. But I would open that up for anyone else's opinion.
If I could add then, Chair, and I'll keep it very brief, the broadband equity access dollars are about to hit the state, as Commissioner Rolfes is more than aware of. With state match, we're talking $1.5 billion. I would think it's particularly important for our council here and our members to get their house in order in front of it for underserved and unserved, because now is the golden age of funding for it. And I'll end on this note that just yesterday, Mr. Aaron Wheeler is the newly appointed state broadband director. And this is important to us. He was the IT director for the Suquamish tribe. He's particularly sensitive to public broadband. Maury Black Eagle hired him 18 years ago for designing, building, and supporting the Suquamish tribe services. And in addition, he is a board member of TribalNet, a national network of tribal technical leaders across the nation. So without belaboring it, if you think about it, the new director of the SBO combined with the funding, I think we need to re-emphasize for our membership exploring applications, technical assistance, and getting house in order under multimodal broadband as a transportation alternative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beck, could I ask a follow-up question of Ed, please?
Sure.
Ed, would you suggest that at some point it would be useful? Years ago, we had invited the former director of SBO to brief the board and update them. Would this be an appropriate thing to, just so everybody's up to speed? And Beck is absolutely right. I should have highlighted that as a stay the course. This is a case where PRTPO itself doesn't have a lot to do with actual broadband, but it's vitally important to it is transportation of information. And you all, this is a way for PRTPO to help get information out to you all that you can take back to your respective jurisdictions.
That is so spot on. There's going to be more money technically available to us through the BEAD program, State Broadband Office, than there is through WashDOT. over the next biennial period.
I
And
will follow up with you on the side and get some, it might be able to drop your name when I reach out to him. Thank you for that.
Is there any other input on the items to take a deeper dive look in with our regional transportation plan? We're in agreement that Sarah will come back, as she said, in April with some sort of scope on each of those items and continue this process forward. What are you going to take to the TAC in March?
It sort of depends upon how many applications we get for transportation alternatives.
okay.
If we get a
Because
lot of
you have
applications, this won't even go to the TAC. But ideally, I'll be able to run some ideas by them because I also want to talk with them about data. So there's some other sort of cross-cutting themes, and I think land use falls into this, local access to data, as well as staffing resources, are sort of these cross-cutting themes. And I'll think about how to work that in with them, but it sort of depends. I'm sorry.
Okay. And I'll remind you, because we do have new folks with us today, our intent with this regional transportation plan is we're going to make it, God, what's the word I'm looking for? A fairly active document that will live on our website. And we've had a couple of demonstrations on the GIS, and I know that our technical folks will be able to get data they need for reports and grants. And we're designing this to be a living document, living on our website, as opposed to just a written document on a shelf somewhere. So we're really enthusiastic about moving this forward. And we do thank you also earlier today for allowing us to secure that $30,000 from Olympic Region. So with that, we will move on down our agenda. And Sarah, this is another one for you. And it is
Lost my agenda. Oh, there it is. Sorry, I got lost over here.
Yeah, it's the UPWP update.
Yes, the UPWP. So I'll give just a hair more background than I might have otherwise. UPWP is an acronym that stands for Unified Planning Work Program. And in transportation in our world, that is our budget and our work program. Our UPWP is a 2-year document. This time last year, the board was scoping the UPWP that's driving our work program now. And in accordance with PRTPO's UPWP development policy, it has one of those. We do a mid-year, a mid-biennium update. Sometimes that might be allow us an opportunity to say, hey, we're coming in a little under budget on something, and would you like to, as a board, identify some additional work to do? This year, we're not coming to you suggesting that we might do some additional work. We will do a little bit of update to the budget to calibrate based on where we are, but we don't have, our budget is our budget. We don't have any other resources to draw from. So what we'll be looking at mostly is a shifting, if we need to, between administration and planning. We will, we receive guidance from WashDOT in how to develop our UPWP or what they want us to look at in each new year. And we've received that. We received no additional funding from WashDOT. So there are a couple of things in there that they suggest that if we have the resources to jump in and do, they would like us to, which is one of them is to assist our local partners with bike and pedestrian grants and project delivery. We got no money for that. And they would also like us to update the data, collect the data for them for local routes on the national highway system, which again, we don't have any resources for that. So there's about the only real new thing we might see in our work program is an update of the federal functional classification system and support WashDOT in that effort, because that's something we do after the census, and we have our new urbanized areas to account for. So we're not really looking at anything new. Won't be anything that would really jump out at you new, and no new opportunity to identify additional work. I will come to you in April with a draft amendment package, which will look, frankly, a whole lot like what you see attached to the staff report today, our current UPWP. The numbers will look a little bit different between the years, but the bottom line won't change. And we'll then have you take action in June and then submit that to WashDOT. And that will guide us through the rest of this biennium. So I would welcome any questions, happily answer anything that I can. Otherwise, you'll see this in April and for a first read.
Marty?
I don't know if this is the time, but I had kind of something that I wanted to say is about if we're able to achieve getting more funding for PRTPO, if what you stated earlier about the work that Darren and Ed do, it would be nice to take action and see about getting that up towards what other people would be charging for their services, because it's, I don't know, I just thought that might be a nice thing to do. Just seems right, you know.
Thank you. I think many of us agree with that. If you remember, as far as the UPWP is concerned, we did a little bit of work on this last year, putting together the 2-year plan. And this is just an update to that plan. And what we have determined so far is that we don't have extra money to look for that we could use on our for wish list projects, where we're just getting by to get our RTP updated with the funds we have. So that's what I believe there is going to be back in April, is something with very minor changes from what you're seeing today. And there is a process she'll bring in April, we'll approve it in June. And between then, there will be a meeting with DOT to make sure that it's appropriate and all of that. It's kind of a formal thing we go through every year. Are there any questions or comments on the UPWP and the amendment process?
Thank you, Beck.
Thank you, Marty. Appreciate your comments. You always bring good ideas to us. Appreciate that a lot. Okay, moving on down. We now have on the agenda the election of officers for the next biennium. And in December, I brought forth a slate of officers. I had recommended Lindsay Schwarm Warren as chair and Ben Thompson from the city of Port Townsend as vice chair, and Ted Jackson from the Port of Allen as secretary. Since I made that recommendation in December, Mr. Jackson has resigned his commissionership from the Port of Allen. So that left the secretary position open. And so we will be accepting nominations from the floor today for the secretary position, just so that the board is aware. When I came up with names in December, I looked, because we are quite a diverse geographical area, and we only have 3 officers and we have 4 counties. So Kitsap County has been on the executive committee now for 8 to 10 years. And so with myself terming out as chair and coming off the executive committee, I thought Kitsap could kind of take their turn off of the executive committee. And Lindsay, being from the city of Port Angeles, he represents Clallam County. And I looked to Jefferson County and had a conversation with Kate Dean and Ben Thomas. And Ben from the city of Port Townsend was willing to serve as the the vice chair. And then I went to Mason County, and I don't want to say struggle, but Mason County had offered me some interesting scenarios because Randy Netherland is terming out as vice chair, and for reasons that are very valid on his part, did not want to step up to chair or serve as secretary. So then I went to the city of Shelton, and I was looking for someone who had been on our who'd been active and regularly attended meetings of the RTPO. And that would have been Deidre Peterson, and she did not stand for re-election this year. So there was no one from the city of Shelton who had been active in the RTPO. So then I went to the Port of Allen, and then now Ted has resigned. And so then when I was still now looking for a secretary, I thought, how can I get close to Mason County? And I contacted Gary Anderson with the Port of Bremerton. And Gary is a very successful business person here in the South Kitsap region, or the Kitsap region. And he is very transportation oriented, and he's very astute politically. So I invited Gary to think about it, and I believe that Gary is interested in that position. But we will be accepting nominations from the floor for all of the positions. And again, my recommendation is Lindsay Schwarm Warren for chair and Ben Thomas for vice chair. That's what I brought forward before. And then we would accept additional nominations from the floor. So I open it up to the board to make official nominations of either my recommendation or adding Gary and recommending a slate of members.
Madam Chair, I move that we move forward with your original recommendations, except for the change of Gary Anderson to be nominated for a secretary.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Was that you, Dick?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So it is moved and seconded that the slate of officers for next year be Lindsay Schwarm Warren as chair, Ben Thomas as vice chair, and Gary Anderson as secretary. Is there anyone does anyone want to talk to the nominations? Okay, hearing none. It's been moved and seconded to approve the slate of candidates. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the slate of candidates is approved as presented. Thank you very much. And I really look forward to turning it over to the three of you. We will have a city. Ben Thomas also is a city, but he's also chair of Jefferson Transit this year. And we'll have a port representative, which we have not had for a while. So again, I appreciate all of you willing to step up and help lead the organization going forward. Appreciate that a lot. And now it's, oh, my watch is exactly 11:45. So that's
Marty has his hand up.
Oh, Marty, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand raised.
Yeah, I guess I'm just talkative today. I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for all the new candidates that are doing this. I volunteered for vice chair on the TAC last meeting, so I just want to say that. Thanking you guys for that. I know, and thank you, Beck, for all your service that you've done. Seems like I've known you for a long time now.
I know it has been. I say
Yeah,
probably about 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how long I've been working here.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, we will open it up for public comment. Ed, is there anyone at Kitsap Transit or in the audience who would have public comment today?
There is not. We have one attendee is raising their hand, so I'm going to promote them to panelists. Their name is Nick, so they should be coming up here soon.
Okay.
Nick, you had a question?
Yes, did you have public comment, Nick?
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to introduce myself quickly. For those who don't know, Nick Dosty, city engineer for City of Sequim. I am replacing David Garlington, or filling in his spot, as in support for and an alternate for Rachel Anderson. But I also, looking at the agenda, just wanted to make a brief comment on those deep dive items and the topics to kind of keep on trucking on. The defederalization effort, I think, can also coincide with the more reliable funding that I think was item 5 on that list. I can speak personally on the engineering side, public works side of things. I have seen quite a few pools of federal money that are less than $1 million, that if we can take advantage of that program, we would be able to consistently spend that year after year on transportation related projects, just within the city of Sequim. I'm sure city of Port Angeles has similar small scale projects that they can do that with. And of course, the county with their chip seal program, expanding that, being able to transfer those federal dollars to state dollars. I personally worked with Joe Denisi on this effort when I was at the county. And so, if there's any question, I know there's the TAC, but if there's any question about what that opportunity looks like to use that funding, I'd be more than happy to dive into that with anyone that's looking for information. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. And I'm so happy that you joined us today, because David Garlington was very engaged in the RTPO, and we miss David. So thank you for being here. And I know Rachel does a good job for the city of Sequim. With that, are there any RTPO member updates? Anything you guys want to talk about or brag about? Lindsay, and then Christine.
This might be the time when we thank you, Beck, because of course you don't put that on the agenda, but you have been an amazing chair for the PRTPO, and your leadership is such, I think, foresight and interest in democracy, in how we do this as an organization, really like planning the planning process in such an amazing way. So I know I will not fill your shoes as well as the incoming chair, because you have set that bar. It's so incredibly high. So thank you so much for all you do, and I hope that we all get to stay in touch with you. I don't know if you're terming off the RTPO, or if you're just going to stay on in a non-executive committee capacity.
Right. When we started this journey, and I must say it's been my pleasure. I have enjoyed all of the time I have spent doing this, and I'm retired, so I have the time. But what was important to me is the last document that we have to update, with Kitsap Transit as our lead planning organization, since our transition is the regional transportation plan. And so, as you all know, or most of you know, I am no longer a city council person in the city of Port Orchard. However, the city does allow me to continue to represent them here. And I will do that until the RTP is done, because it's important to me to see that document completed. Yeah, so again, it's been my pleasure. Thank all of you for the hard work that you have done for us too. And Christine, you have comments?
I do, but I feel a little bit like awkward following up on that. This has nothing to do with you, Beck.
That is
I do thank
perfect.
you for your service, because I only know this organization with you as the chair. I wanted to update folks, or just let you know that the Hood Canal Bridge opening, traffic congestion on the east side, the westbound side, is a priority for me, and I will be meeting with the Navy, I think next week, with staff to see if we can get some kind of informal acknowledgement of the bridge openings during Memorial Day weekend, for example. We had that 10 or 15 years ago, leadership changes, and I'm hoping that they'll be open to that conversation. So I just wanted to let you know that we're pursuing that. And secondly, for my Jefferson County neighbors, I am concerned about the roundabout construction and its impact on westbound traffic backups on Highway 3. So I'm going to continue to follow up with the state on how they plan to manage the congestion on the other side of the bridge during that construction period. We have a little bit of time, so if we can be proactive, we can avert personal disaster for people on the other side.
I appreciate that. Appreciate you already being quite knowledgeable on bridge procedures and how to move that forward, because that is the bridge and the ferries are just really critical to transportation in our counties. There's just absolutely no other way. And we don't necessarily have the resources, but collectively we can perhaps help move the needle a little bit. Is there anything else for the good of the organization this morning? Marty?
Yeah, there's something else I wanted to say that came to mind just not too long ago, or I've been thinking about it, but PRTPO has done a lot of really great things since we're all collaborating and, you know, coming together as one. There's a lot more that we tackled since before. I've seen the changes because I've been around for a while. But anyway, you know, like the transit services, how everything connects now. I remember a long time ago, I took a bus trying to get up to I got a couple of sisters up in Nia Bay, and there wasn't no connections like that back then. And me and my brothers had to hitchhike most of the way because once we made it where the bus stopped at the end of the county line, then there was no connection. Things like that, and that we can come together and just solve these problems that we have. This really great thing. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Okay, seeing none, we will have the meeting adjourned and we will see everyone again in April. Thank you.